name is Gerry Gill, and I'm from the area, fished here for 45 years. I had my own boat up to 2013, and then I sold it on, and I've been born and reared here, fishing all my life. From I was at school, that's all I wanted to do was fish. I had no connection to fishing because there was nobody belonging to me was fishing, so I just liked the sea, and I couldn't wait to get finished school to get at it, and started when I was about 16 fishing salmon on, and went on from that, fishing different boats here, and I bought a second hand boat in 1978 called the Ross Inver, and I kept it for 4.5 years, and I got a new boat built then called the Paul Stephen, and I had it for about 30 years, and then I got out of it. I just had enough, because the way things was going, it wasn't getting any easier. So that's basically it. And in the West, whenever you get to a certain age, you feel you have enough done. It's not a 9-to-5 job. So.
And what sort of fishing would you be doing?
All whitefish, and done a wee bit of herring and that, and out of Galway and Rossaville, and we whitefished from Howth, fished prawns out of Howth, whitefished out of Dunmore East. Most of the time we would have fished from home here, fishing the local grounds. Then it came then that they started to close areas in the local grounds, and I was very restricted then, and because of the size of my boat was 56 feet long, wooden boat, and it wasn't that you could steam any place to fish whenever you couldn't fish in your own waters. And I fought with the department, I fought with BAM to try and keep the area open. But the decommissioning came on the scene back around the same time. I applied for it. My boat was just too small, 2 or 3 feet onto the size, even though in tonnage it was bigger than a lot of the boats that was decommissioned, but it didn't go with tonnage, it went by length. And was turned down. Never got it. So then I had to put the boat through the COC, the Code of Practice, and that ended up that it put me out of business, because all the things that needed to be done to the boat, I had to pay for myself. There was no such thing as getting a grant or anything to do it. And if they had told me at the time, if the department had come and told me it's going to cost too much money, I could have sold off the licence and the boat at the time, but it ended up that I ended up having to get loans out of the bank to get the work done to the boat, which meant then that when I got the work all done, I had to sell the boat. That was it. That was my 45 years fishing down the drain. That's the way it went. And nobody, I'm not going to curse, but nobody, I fought with the department for years and BAM to see if there was anything could be got out of it, because of through the decommissioning, and there was another round of decommissioning come up, was turned down then too. So we never got decommissioning. If I had got decommissioning at the start, I wouldn't have had to go through all that I went through with the Code of Practice, because the boat at this stage was coming up on 24, 25, 26 years of age, and because it was a wooden boat. A wooden boat takes a good bit of maintenance, and there was a lot of work over the years. There was a lot of work done over the years, but it was to compare with the department's rules. There was a lot of work had to be done, and it just ended up then that I had to sell the boat when the work was done. I had a son fishing with me, and I didn't know whether he wanted to go on. If he had wanted to go on and become a skipper, I probably would have went for a new boat. But I was getting too old myself for going for a new boat, and I didn't want that headache. And it ended up then that my son, he didn't want to become a skipper. He went on another one of the pelagic boats, and he's on it since. So then I was sort of, there was nobody else coming behind me, so I got out. Things at that time was starting to get the amount of paperwork and the amount of hassle having with areas and quotas and all that he just didn't want to go through the like of that. So that's the way it ended up. That was it. I could probably would have fished longer if I had got everything had worked out all right with the boat. I would have fished for another few years anyway. And what I was intending to do was, if I had the boat up and running and sell it on, and like what I had to do at the end of, I had to sell the boat to pay off the bank, because that was one of the conditions that the bank gave me at the time, that once the boat was complete, once the work was done to the boat, that the boat would be sold and they would get their money. There was no such thing as me going to fish and pay them back. They wanted their money there and then. That was it. A fella called Gerry Foley bought the boat. I sold the boat here to local men. There's a foil wire company I sold it to. So then they sold it on, and this Gerry Foley, and I'll be chatting to him an odd time there on the phone, and he's very happy with the boat and doing well. And the closed areas here where we couldn't fish at all, but I was the only boat of that size that was here at the time. The rest of them was all bigger boats, so they could move all around the coast. And there'd be more opportunities for fishing out of the Lake of Dunmore East, because you can fish prawns at certain times of the year, and you can go white fishing at certain times of the year. It was all white fish here. There was no prawns or anything like that, and it was just the case that it meant that if you had been doing that type of fishing, you're going to have to leave home, and you're going to be away for 2 and 3 weeks at a time before. And I wasn't prepared to do that. That was it. It was unfair at the time, but the powers that be didn't think that. No, it was a tough old time now. Well, to me, they had people doing these surveyors, and that was coming around and surveying boats and telling you, aye, your boat, no problem putting it through the code of practice. It's not going to take a fortune to do it. But when it come to the crunch then, there was, when the work was done, I had a fella fishing the boat for me then. Whenever the boat went through the code of practice, the boat went to sea one night out of Dunmore East and got into difficulties. The lifeboat had to tow them into Baltimore. Whenever the boat was surveyed, they discovered that there was a terrible lot of work needed done. And this was the boat after being surveyed. There was a terrible lot of work needed done to the bottom. She burst aboard and all that particular night, and the men could have been lost. And I wasn't in it at the time, but whenever I got on to the department, they told me that it was like as much as to say that it was a cover-up. And there was no cover-up. And the boat had to go on the slip then, and it was practically a new bottom went onto the boat at that time, and that's where the problem arose, where I hadn't the money to do it all, so I had to go to the bank. And it wasn't easy getting it from the bank either. And then that was the condition then, that the boat was to be sold when the work was done, and pay them back. That was it. From I started fishing at the age of 16 or so, I loved every minute of fishing. But everything about it, whenever you could leave here on a Sunday evening, you could go wherever you wanted. There was no such thing as, there were certain areas you had to go to, and a certain amount of fish that you were allowed to catch. You could have caught whatever was there, and you could have landed it, and there was no such thing as going fishing the local grounds here and on a Sunday night and having to go to South End of Ireland on a Monday night. You know, there was none of that then, and that sort of made our job was hard enough without having to be told where to go and what to catch and when to catch it. And if you didn't catch your quota within the month, you couldn't carry it on to the next month. You know, that was one big problem I seen with it, because if you were broke down and you couldn't catch your quota for a certain month, you couldn't carry that fish across to the next month to where you could have got double the amount of fish the second month. You can't do that, which I thought was very wrong, because it left you that if you had any breakdowns, or weather was another big factor in it all. If you couldn't get out with bad weather, you couldn't catch your quota. But you couldn't, if the next month was good, you couldn't fish every day the next month and catch your quota, which was wrong in every sense of the word, I thought. You really couldn't go for your quota. Once you had your quota caught, you had to fill in a logbook. Once you had your quota caught, that was for certain species. If you had a quota of cod for that month and you had caught the first week of it, that was you finished. You would have to either dump them or stop fishing, which was the thing that annoyed me big time about the fishing industry was whenever we had a dump fish at sea. That was the worst. That really turned me against it, because you weren't throwing out fish that was living, you were throwing out fish that was dead, and you were throwing out good food, and like there could have been something done with them. But that's the way that they were doing things, like, which was, to me, was wrong. Whenever men would be fishing on a certain ground and there were good fishing going, whenever they had their quota caught, they had to leave that area. But the thing about it now, they have the boats to do it. You know, the type of boats that they can fish all around the coast. And there seems to be a future, and the quantity of fish seems to be improved from what it was. And plus the fact boats is better, gear's better, and they're able to fish more weather and things like that. They wouldn't be losing as much time now over weather as we would have done, because the type of boats they have.
And do you find or know of many young people from around here getting involved in the fishing?
Not very many, and there are only maybe a couple in this harbour. It's because it's their fathers fished and they're carrying on the tradition of fishing. There's only, well, you see yourself the many boats is in this harbour. It used to be you couldn't get tied up on it. Years ago, there was 25 years ago, there would have been 30 years ago, that harbour there was chock-a-block with boats. But the thing is, and most of the crews, they're Filipinos or Polish or some of that. You can't get the young men to go to fish.
Why, in your opinion, Gerry, won't to go out?
Why won't they? Well, one of the things is to say on social hours, like they go away to fish here on a Saturday morning maybe, and they're not back to the following Saturday, and they could come in, land their fish and straight out again. I mean, some young fella, 17 or 18 years of age, on a Saturday evening, stepping onto a boat to go to fish, he would rather be going someplace else. Would you not?
But yet, at the same time, you'll see, around here, you'll see on a Monday morning, van loads of men heading off to Dublin and Dublin sites, and back on the Friday, so... Well,
the thing about the fishing, when it's a 24-hour-a-day job, like there's not, you cannot say it 8 or 7 or 8 o'clock in the evening, I'm going to bed now and I'll get up at 6 in the morning. It doesn't work that way, because you're working all the time and things goes wrong. It's just not all plain sailing. You have to haul and sort the fish, and it's the unsocial hours, I think, more than anything. I'm not saying the money's, I would say, good enough, and there was a time here whenever there wasn't much work for the like of them men in Dublin and that there was more of them men interested in fishing, because it was a good enough job at the time. But then whenever they come shore work up, they'd rather be ashore working rather than at sea. I have a son who works on the pier here, he works over in the co-op, and he's making a living from it. The reason he's not at sea was because he couldn't get over the seasickness. He tried it and tried it and tried it and just couldn't get over it. So he decided he wasn't going to try it any longer. So he just got a shore job, and that was it. Not very much more I can tell you, unless I tell you lies.
You can tell us lies too.